So today I was looking around the shop and I realized that I had a lot of old Klein tools, and it got me thinking about my whole career as an electrician. When I started as an apprentice, I worked in 1993. I got a job doing residential work for a local contractor. And I started with pretty much hand-me-down tools, mostly Sears, Craftsman type stuff, and nothing real special. As I advanced in my career, the trend became to buy what everybody else had. So there were guys in the shop who would have the cool tools, so you kind of had to keep up with the Joneses. Then I became a union electrician in 1996 as an apprentice, and then I went through the inside wireman program through the JATC. That's when things really got kind of amped up as far as everybody had a little more money to spend. A lot of these guys were younger, didn't have families, so they put it into tools and trucks and toys. So it was kind of this battle of who had the coolest tools, who spent the most money, basically who was the most bougie or Gucci electrician. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I'm not sure if other trades did the same kind of thing. I'm sure they did, but I can only speak from an electrician's perspective, is that's what was going on in the trade during those years. And I'm sure it's still that way today. Although I have seen a lot more electricians these days actually using Harbor Freight stuff, which back in the day, if someone had Harbor Freight tools, Pittsburgh tools or whatever, you would kind of look down on them because they weren't, Klein or Knipex or, some other kind of higher end professional tool. But anyway, I kind of wanted to go through a few tools that I had bought back in the day because I had to have them, and they were what everybody else had. And one of the coolest things you could buy back then was a Klein Whirly. This is a tool that we'd use for trim. You stick this into a trim screw and you can rotate the screw counterclockwise or clockwise and either pull that screw out or screw it in. It was kind of a handy tool to have, and then accompanying that was the Phillips version of that same tool. And so you'd often have guys have these in their tool bags. And I'll get to one of my points in a second. Continuing on with the Whirly type tool, this is the Whirly wire nut driver, I guess you'd call it. And that, along with these, would be in your tool bag, especially doing residential work. Then you've got of course, your standard 6-inch flathead, or whatever you want to call it, screwdriver. And of course, to go along with that, you had to have your Phillips, which I don't have here. I wonder what happened to my Phillips. I do have a longer Phillips. So you got those in your tool bag. And then you've got to have your longer trim screw, your trim screwdriver in your tool bag. And you've also have to have, depending on what you're doing residential, you might as well throw in a number 2 square drive. And that's a square drive because it's not tapered. Let me get it in screen there. Robertsons have a tapered square head. Square drives do not. Little pro tip there. That's number 2. Well, sometimes you need a number 1, especially for, I had those backwards. This is the number 2, and this is the number 1. I think the old can lights used to use a number 1 square drive on some point of it. I think it was the Juno brand. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's another old school electricians out there who can tell me. So you got those in your tool bag, and you're carrying that around. And I don't have any out here right now, but you'd have nut drivers that would be kind of your favorite, most commonly used nut drivers. So you'd have probably at least 1, 2, or 3, depending on what you were doing during the rough-in stage. So on top of that, you would carry your linesman pliers, or lineman pliers, however you want to say it, your dikes, your strippers, some type of razor knife, tape measure. Yes, I'm old school. Yes, I know there's a lot other tape measures out there, but I carried this style for years and it works for me. Although at work I carry a 16-foot Milwaukee and I love that thing. So anyway, you got your hammer, which is just a cheap Husky hammer, does the trick. So you've got that stuff in your tool bag. I'm going to drop it here in a second, as well as a pencil and a Sharpie. It just got to be a lot. Your tools would, unless you had suspenders, your tool bags would want to droop unless you really cinch those things down tight, which you can do. And some guys will opt to use the ratcheting Klein screwdriver. I never really liked this thing. It just seemed like if I'm going to get carpal tunnel, I'll just do it the old-fashioned way, just by using my hands constantly. And then you've got to have some type of trim screwdriver for doing low voltage type stuff. And here's just a variety of ones that I don't even use anymore. These pretty much just live in a toolbox for spare. I'll use it later. You know how it goes, guys. You just toss things in toolboxes and they just kind of, yeah, you just throw them away. I might just throw these away. I'm not going to go back to them. So all that is to say is that back in the day, we would carry a lot of crap. And that's not even counting other stuff that guys might want to add in. I'm sure I'm missing some things. Leave it in the comments what you carried as a residential electrician in your tool bags that just weighed you down, but you just couldn't live without. So let me go to what, push these away here. Let me go to what, after being in the trade for 30 years, now this is going to be the caveat here. The asterisk here is going to be, this is not a comprehensive list of tools. This is just what I use for doing stuff here on the homestead / farm / house and whatever else, shop, outbuilding, that I use that does 99% of what I need it to do until I run into that specialty fitting that I just can't, whatever. But that's a tool bag. All that stuff I just showed you could have been put in a tool bag. Today, this is what I use. I have a tool bag and I keep linesman pliers, dikes, hammer, strippers, non-contact voltage tester, and I love the Fleer brand. I know a lot of other guys use like Milwaukee or Klein. They're good too. What is this? A 1, 2, 3. Anyway, it's 11-in-1 or whatever it's called. But it comes with kind of, what they come with. Everyone's got one of these or something like it. You got screwdrivers and nut drivers. If you pull that out, you can use that for a nut driver. There's 2 different sizes of nut driver, actually 3 if you count the nut driver that holds in this bit right here. So this takes care of a lot of screwdrivers that we used to carry. And I'm not sure why. It seemed like at some point in my career, we went from using a dozen screwdrivers to just using one of these. And I can't really remember when that was. A razor knife of some flavor, tape measure, and pencil and Sharpie. And that's all. That's it. You could put these in a small bag if you wanted to. And that's pretty much going to get you by with 99% of electrical work on a property or in your house or whatever. And my dogs are going to play and knock over the... Thanks, boys. But anyway, it also... I think I was about a first year or second year apprentice in the union, and I noticed these old school... these old-time journeymen would come in, and they'd have one of those, almost like a little green military bag. And it was literally less than the size of a shoebox. And they would carry that in to go work. And I'm like, how can you guys get the work done when you're carrying something that small, that compact? And meanwhile, I've got, either one of those buckets that has the bucket liners and it's just overflowing with tools. But you had to watch out. there was a tool list that we were limited to. We couldn't bring anything that was not on the tool list per the union standards. Some guys did, and I noticed when I became a service electrician, we really skated by the rules there because usually we worked alone. We had our own van, and no one usually looked inside of our vans. So we would pack things that weren't on that tool list, but we got a lot of work done. And yes, people would call you a worm. They would call you a shop rocket or a shoppy. Been there, done that. I'm no longer in that genre. Now I do maintenance. But to all my other shop rockets out there, you guys are awesome. I know what it takes to be a good service driver, and I would put that across the board. Whether you're an HVAC tech, plumbing, any type of service tech who's on your own, you've got to know how to do almost everything by yourself and have every tool available at your disposal. Anyway, that was a side note. So one thing I've learned here is that, yes, when you're coming up in a trade, you're going to want to buy all those cool things, and you're going to do it. You're just going to do it. You have to learn. You've got to go through the process. And at a certain point, you realize that I don't need this. I don't need that. Your skills will outweigh the tools. And eventually you will be distilled down into just the stuff that you know how to use and use well. It kind of reminds me of that adage, something like beware the man who only carries one gun or something like that. I forget leave it in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But it's more about the knowledge and experience than it is with the tools. So when it comes to buying tools for yourself or for your house or homestead or farm, you'll learn. You'll get down to what are the necessities that you have to have, and you're going to spend a lot of money in the process. But eventually, you'll be able to narrow that stuff down. And with all this crap here, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it now. But anyway, I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you got any value or entertainment at all out of this video, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe. And we will see you guys next time.